All right, thanks for joining everyone. So this workshop is going to be a more hands-on workshop. We're going to use the Accumulate CLI tool to run some basic commands so you can get a sense of the types of accounts that we have here at Accumulate, how to send transactions, how to fund an account using the Faucet, how to generate credits, because in Accumulate, since we have a two-token structure, we have Acme and then we have credits, which are actually used to pay for transaction fees. So we'll be going through how to generate those credits and how to create an ADI, which is the most important account type in Accumulate. That's the identity account type, as well as a few other commands to show you the how powerful an ADI can be. So this is going to be somewhat of an interactive workshop. At least it can be interactive. So please follow along if you can. So that way, if you have any questions or you're running into any issues, we can solve them real time. I have Kyle here with me. Kyle will be manning the chat if you have any questions that you want to put into the chat. And so today we're going to be using the stable testnet. So if you have not gotten your environment set up yet, I'll just run through a few commands that I've already ran just to get you up to speed. So the first thing you have to do, you have to clone the Accumulate repository. So when you're in the directory that you want to be, you're going to do git clone, and let me just find the .git URL here, and I'll paste it in. So your first step is to run git clone and then clone the repository from our GitLab. And I'll paste this in the chat for everyone. I'm not going to run it because I already have it run. So I'm in the Accumulate repository right now. So once you clone it down, let me back up a bit. You're going to type in cd and then accumulate to enter into the repository. And once you're in here, there's a few steps you have to do to get set up onto the same network that I'm on, which is the stable testnet. The first thing you have to do is you have to, well, if you just cloned, you should be up to date. If you cloned yesterday, or if you haven't cloned in a while, you're going to run a git pull just to make sure that your repository is up to date with the latest changes. As you can see, mine is up to date. And then once you do that, you're going to switch to the branch for the stable testnet. What I'm going to do here also is just put in the link to the section in our docs where we actually have the all the testnet endpoints listed out. So at any time you can go to that page that I just put into the chat to see what the available endpoints are and which branches to check out. So you might see here on my screen that I'm already on the CLI-V0.6 branch. So that's the branch for the stable testnet. If you wanted to use the beta testnet, which we're not going to do today, but if you wanted to do that, you would actually go to CLI-V1.0.0. So this is the latest update of the Accumulate network, which was just pushed live yesterday. So it's very new, which is why we're not using it for this workshop, because it might be a bit buggy. And so just to keep this fluid, we're going to use the stable testnet, which, as the name suggests, is stable. So now that we're on V0.6, the first thing you have to do is build the CLI. So you're going to do that with go build ./cmd/accumulate. And if you're running that for the first time, it might take a little longer than it took me. It might have to download some dependencies. Once you're ready to go, then you can start using the CLI. And so to use the CLI, you type in ./accumulate. And When you just run accumulate with no commands, you'll get the help menu where you'll see all available commands that you can use. If you have any questions about any command and you want to find out more information, let's say you want to know more about what available commands are for account, you can type in accumulate account. It'll bring up the account menu. So you can see here we have a create command, we have a generate command, get, list, QR, restore. And let's say you wanted to find out more information about the QR command. Type in QR, and it'll tell you that you need to pass in a URL and whatever flags. Flags are global. You can pass those in with any command that you run. So just to show you some important ones, if you want to know what calls, what API methods the CLI is running in the background, just pass in a -d at the end, and that will show you what is happening in the background so you can follow along. It's good for if you're debugging or if you just want to see what API calls are used for different commands, which could be helpful for when you're developing your applications. So -d is a very useful command to keep in mind. The other useful command is -s, which is to specify a server. So since we're on the stable testnet branch, the default server is our public stable testnet endpoint, which is here. So you don't have to use -s. If you wanted to connect to a specific node in the accumulate network, you can paste that in here. So for example, I have a couple written down over here. So if I wanted to connect to a particular node, such as that, then I can specify it with -s. All right, so now that we got that house cleaning out of the way, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is create a Lite account. And the reason why we're going to start with a Lite account is because in order to create an ADI, which is the real bread and butter of Accumulate, you need credits. It costs credits to actually generate that ADI. And so we need to create a Lite account to start. A Lite account is just a very simple account type in Accumulate. It has a regular alphanumeric hash as your address. And we do that with the command, sorry, I forgot to add account here. So you do that with the command /accumulate account generate. When you run that, it'll generate an account for you. So this name here, that's actually the name of the key that generated with your Lite account. This Lite account address is not actually real yet. So we created an accumulate valid address, but until we actually send tokens to it, it's not going to exist. So if you tried searching it in the Explorer, it would show up as non-exist. So what we have to do to actually show that it exists is we have to send it some tokens. And we have a built-in faucet in the testnet that you can use to easily give yourself tokens. And so we're going to run the faucet on our Lite account here. It's also a good idea to copy this down. So if you're following along, copy it down off to the side because we're going to be referencing this Lite account a few times. You should also copy down the name, although if you'll notice here, the name is actually just the Lite account without the /acme at the end. But good to copy that down as well. And now we're going to run this faucet. And you can see here we got a transaction hash. We got a few other hashes. Error code OK means that it ran successfully. So don't worry if you see this error code field. OK is a good error to see. It's not an error at all. And I want to run this one more time for you with -d, just so you can see what's going on here. So when you run -d, it actually shows you that it's running the method faucet. It's sending that using the endpoint testnet2.accumulatenetwork.io. FYI, testnet2 and testnet, if you look at our networks page in the docs, you'll see it actually says testnet.accumulatenetwork.io. Those point to the same endpoint, so don't worry about whether you use two or just testnet. It's the same thing. So you can see here that we passed in a URL. This was the URL we passed in, which is the Lite account. So if you wanted to recreate this using API calls, then you can use a CLI to help generate the body that you need to send with that API call. And then you can see the response here that we got, which here that information is repeated in the message that you get as well. So to see what our balance is now, we're going to run an account get. And when you run account get on an address, it'll just tell you the basic information about that address. And so here you can see we have a balance of, what is that? That is 4 million. So one Faucet call will get you 2 million Acme. I ran it twice, so that's why I have 4 million. And so that should be more than enough to do what we need to do. So before we move on, any questions up to this point about getting set up or generating your first account? All right, and Kyle, thanks for putting the Explorer up onto the screen. So you can use, what Kyle put in was the Faucet endpoint. That same website is also our Explorer, just without the /Faucet at the end. And so you can use that to check transactions as well. So instead of using account get in the CLI, you can just paste this into the Accumulate Explorer and you'll see all the information there as well. We're going to just stick to the CLI for this workshop because the Explorer is pretty straightforward to use, but you have that option as well. All right, so if there are no questions, now that we've created an account and we funded an account, actually one thing I want to show you here, like I mentioned before, when we generated this account, it gave you this name. So this is the key that's stored locally on your computer, wherever you're running the CLI. So I'm just going to show you this command, key list, which is going to list all the keys that you have stored locally on your computer. As you can see, I've been using the CLI a lot, so there are a lot of keys on my computer. The one that we just created was A2CC22, and you can see that's right here. So this is the key name, and this is the public key. We don't show the private keys for obvious reasons. Later on, we're going to create some custom keys, and when we do that, we'll be able to actually create some named keys. You can see some of these are just hashes. Some of these have custom names that I've created. So we'll go over that in a little bit. But let's move on. So now that we've created our, actually, let's do that now. Let's create a custom key. So to create a custom key, you're going to run the command key generate, and then you're going to pass in a name, any name you want. So for this one, I'll just say Web3athon key. So you can see here, that's the name, Web3athon key. It gave me a Lite account. What this is actually saying is I can use this Lite account address. If I fund this address, then this would be the key to access this account. But since it's not funded right now, this Lite account doesn't actually exist. We're going to keep it unfunded for now. We're going to just use the original Lite account that we created. But now when you type in key list, you can see here we have Web3athon key, and there's the key. So we're going to actually use this new key we created to go ahead and create an ADI. So again, this is our bread and butter. ADI stands for Accumulate Digital Identifier or Accumulate Digital Identity, depending on your preference. And this is the core, this is the atomic unit of the Accumulate network. So within the ADI, you can hold multiple token accounts you can hold as many keys as your heart desires or as your application really requires. You can have data accounts. You can have, there's a lot you can do with an ADI. The first step is to create it. So for creating an ADI, you're going to use the command ADI create. And again, if you want to see what commands you have to pass in for ADI create, you could just click enter there and it'll bring up the usage guide so you can see we need to create an origin Lite account. So that's just referring to the account that's going to pay the fees to create this ADI. So we've only funded one account so far, which we did up here. So I'm going to take that Lite account. That's my origin. That's what's going to pay the fees here. And next, we're going to choose an ADI URL to create. So you can choose any name you want. Big thing to note here, we're on the stable testnet. In the stable testnet, you can just type in the name. You actually don't even need to type in ACC://. It'll add that in for you if you don't. I'm going to type in here just Web3athon. And for the stable testnet, that's all you have to do. If you're using the beta testnet, you actually have to type at the end .acme. So every ADI in the latest version of Accumulate has an address. An ADI is always .acme. For the stable testnet, there is no .acme, so we're going to leave that off. Next, we're going to put our key name. And so this is the key that's going to be added as the first key into this ADI, into page 1 of your default keybook. I'm going to do Web3athon key. So I'm going to add that in over here. And let's see what's next. Keybook name is optional. So if you wanted to name your keybook, you can pass that in. Let's just leave that out for now. We'll just use the default, which is book. And the public key page 1, that's optional as well. We're going to skip that. So let's go ahead and run this. So all we really need at the very least is our Lite account. And actually, I'm realizing now this is actually going to fail. And the reason why is because I haven't added credits yet, but let's just run it anyway. So yeah, so this failed because I forgot to add credits to this ADI. So let's go ahead and do that next and then come back to here. So to add credits, now remember in Accumulate, we have Acme and we use the Faucet to add Acme to our Lite account. But in order to pay transaction fees, we need credits. And for that, we use the credits function. The credits function needs the origin Lite account. So that's the origin token account. It could be a Lite account or an ADI token account, which we'll create later. Right now, we've only funded the Lite account, so we're going to add that in. And then we're going to pass in the, so if you're using an ADI token account, you would have to specify the key page that holds the key you want to use to sign this transaction. Since we're using a Lite account, you actually just enter in the Lite account address twice. Oops. So I got to copy this again, paste that in. And then the number of credits wanted. So let's give ourselves 50,000 credits. And so this is going to burn a certain amount of Acme to generate 50,000 credits, which will then be added to that Lite account. It's dependent on the price of Acme. So 1 credit is always worth 1 cent. But since the price of Acme is a market-driven price, that actual exchange rate will fluctuate. For the testnet, since Acme is not actually a tradable token, then we will not, it's going to be a standard 5-cent price. Let's try running that again. So if you ever see an accumulate error on the testnet, there is, it's a little bit finicky today. So just try running it again. There might just be some backlog. And so if you run the transaction again, it'll usually work. If it doesn't work the second time, try it a third time. So you can see here it worked. 1 Acme is 5 cents. And so we got 50,000 credits by spending 10,000 Acme. And so to confirm that I have those credits, we're going to use the get function. So the get function is a universal function the command get is a universal command that will return to you any information that you want. So if you pass in an account, it'll return you information on that account. If you pass in a keybook, it'll return information about that keybook. So in this case, we want to just get the account here and see if we have those credits. So you see we have the balance. See why it did not show us the credits. Oh, here we go. Let's do a TX get. And this will specifically give us information back about this transaction. So we're going to pass in the transaction hash. And you can see here, this was transaction type, add credits. And you can also check the synthetic transaction as well if you need to get more detailed information. And so here we can see this is with 2 decimal points at the end. So we got 50,000 credits. So now that we have those credits, we can go back to our original create ADI command. And so again, we're using that original Lite account, which now has 50,000 credits. And we're naming the ADI Web3athon. And we're passing in the Web3athon key, which will be the first key in this ADI. And you don't have to put in ACC://. If you don't, it'll autofill that in for you. I'm going to put it in this case, just to be precise. Now let's run that. And here we go. So we've created the ADI. And to just confirm that we've created this ADI, let's run a get. We're going to do get on Web3athon. And here we go. So we have the ADI URL, ACC://Web3athon. And you can see we did not specify a name for a keybook, so it gave us the default book. So if you remember from our last workshop, in an ADI, you can have multiple books, and each key book holds multiple key pages, and each key page holds multiple keys. So you have 3 layers of keys to really keep your keys organized. The important part is that an ADI and accumulate can hold a massive number of private keys, and you can have different priorities. So your the first page of a key book would be the top priority page, and all those keys can override all the lower keys. And so just to show you here what's inside the book, we're going to run a get function again, and this time we're going to do /book. And you can see by default, we only have 1 page. Books are named, key books are named. Pages are not. Pages are just assigned a numeric number. So since we only have 1 page, if we run accumulate get again and put /book/1 on the back of our ADI, then we'll get information about the first and only key page. And so you can see here, there's 1 key in here, and it's named Web3athon key. So the key that we generated before, if you scroll up here, when we generated this key, that key is now the main private key for your ADI that you've created. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create a second key page just to add a few more keys here so you can see. So first what I'll do is I'll generate some more keys. So I'm going to run key generate, and let's do Web3athon key 2. And let's generate Web3athon key 3. And let's just do a 4th one just in case. And now to check that you've created those keys, you can run accumulate key list. And you can see over here we have Web3athon key, key 2, key 3, key 4. So all those keys were created. So now what we're going to do, we've created our ADI. We have one book called book, and we have one key page called one. We're going to create a second key page in that key book. And we do that with the page create command. So if you, just to bring up the usage guide here for a second, you can see there is a page command here. And if you run accumulate page, oops, you can see the available commands. We're going to be using the create command to create a new key page. So that's accumulate page create. And as you can see here, it requires first the origin keybook URL. And so that's our ADI name / book. So we created, I'm just going to double check up above. We created Web3athon. So this is actually the book address right here. Let me just copy this. So that's our origin keybook URL. Next, we need the signing key name. You can use any key that's in your ADI. Right now, we only have one, and that's Web3athon key. So that's the key we will use, Web3athon key. And you know what? I'm forgetting again. We forgot to add credits to this key page, so this is not going to fail. But let's run it anyway, and then I'll explain why it failed. So I'm going to try to create a new key page, and in that new key page, I'm going to add Web3athon key 2 and Web3athon key 3. And you can see it says insufficient credits because when you're running a transaction in your ADI, you actually need your ADI to pay the transaction fee. And when it comes to ADIs, transaction fees are actually paid by credits that are stored within the key page. And right now we haven't added any credits to our key page, so we got the insufficient credits error. So let's go ahead and add some credits now to our key page. So to do that, we're going to type in the origin token account. Now we've already created a Lite account up above, and we ran the credits function on that. So, we ran the Faucet on that Lite account. So we need Acme to create credits, but it doesn't have to be Acme from the ADI. So you don't have to send Acme to your ADI and then use that to create credits. You can actually just have your Lite account create the credits for the ADI. So we're going to pass in that Lite account that we used before. And then, so we pass in our origin token account, the key page. So this is where we want to send the credits to. And that again is Web3athon / book. And then we're going to add /1 at the end. So if we just do /book, we're only specifying the book, but with credits, we have to actually specify the specific key page. So we're going to add credits to key page 1 in the only book in Web3athon. The number of credits we want, let's do 10,000. Let's make it a more random number. Let's do 11,352. And don't worry about max Acme to spend. That's actually optional, so we'll skip that. Same with percent slippage. And let's run that again. There we go. So again, if you see this connection refused error, just try again. It's just the network being a little finicky. So you can see here we got our 11,352 credits. We spent 2,270 Acme. Just to confirm, we're going to run, let's do ADI directory. So this is a new command. This is similar to get. This command is to actually get specific information about your ADI. And so if you run accumulate directory, You're going to pass in your ADI name, which is Web3athon in our case. And from and to, so this is just referring to the index. So all the accounts under your ADI are sorted. And if you have, let's say, 100 different accounts in your ADI, you might not want to return all of them. So you just specify you want to start with the first account, which is index 0, going until the 10th account. In our case, you can do, let's say you just want to return all the accounts. You can type in 1,000. It'll just return up to 1,000 accounts. We only have about 3. Oh, we only have 1. We have the key book. So you can run the same account with just 1, but if you don't care to figure out how many accounts you have, just throw an arbitrarily high number here. So ADI directory, now we see the book. We're going to run a get on the book /1. And you can see here we have our credit balance. So now we know that key page 1 has enough credits to do what we want to do. So let's back up. Let's go back to creating a key page. And so again, to create a key page, we want to pass in the book where we're creating the page. So in this case, we only have one book, Web3athon/book. And the key that we're going to use to sign this transaction is Web3athon key, which is the key again in that first key page, as you can see here, Web3athon key. And we're creating a new page, which is going to be page number 2. We're passing in the keys Web3athon key 2 and Web3athon key 3. So we're going to create a new key page in this book, and we're going to have these 2 keys living inside that page. So let's go ahead and run that. Looks like it was successful. So to make sure that it was successful, we're going to run an accumulate get first on the book. Accumulate get Web3athon/book, and you could see page count 2 before it was page count 1. And if we run an accumulate get on Web3athon/book/2, we can see we've added 2 keys, Web3athon key 2 and Web3athon key 3. And so now, just to drive this point home, let's say we wanted to create another page and we wanted to add Web3athon key 4. We could actually sign that instead of with Web3athon key, we could sign that with Web3athon key 3. So let's use Web3athon key 3 as the signing key here. And just to switch things up, I'm not going to use Web3athon key 4. Let's use Q key just to switch things up a little bit here. So I'm going to add Q key into this next page. Oh, I forgot to add credits to key page 2. So what we would have to do if we wanted to do this is we'd have to do credits and add credits to now key page 2. Because again, credits are stored on a page basis. So even though we created and sent credits to key page 1, I wanted to use a key that was in key page 2. So I'll have to add credits there. I'll just add 1,200 credits. And let's try that again. There we go. Got 1,200 credits. Now we can create this third key page using Web3athon key 3, which lives in page 2, which now has credits. So we're going to create a third key page with Q key. There we go. And now if we run get on the book, well, that should say 3. There we go. So now we have 3 key pages, and if we go to /3, you can see we have Q key here is the key living in key page 3. So I'm going to pause there for a second. So far what we've done, we've created a Lite account. We've funded that Lite account with credits. We created a custom named key, or a few custom named keys. Then we used that Lite account to create an ADI. And in that ADI, we created one key book and 3 key pages. And in those 3 key pages, we added a few keys. So key page 1, we added Web3athon key 1. Key page 2, we added these 2 keys that I'm highlighting on the screen. And then in key page 3, we added Q key. Any questions so far about key management in general, about creating key pages? What we didn't go over is creating another key book, which you can do as well. And then you can have a whole another array of key pages under that key book. So you can have multiple key books. The other thing we didn't go over as well is you can actually add keys that aren't stored on your computer. You can add references to keys from other ADI accounts. So if you wanted to delegate access to your ADI to another account, you can add their key to your key page, and then they will be able to sign transactions on your behalf. And there's more controls you can do to make sure that they can only sign certain transactions. You can set yourself up as a manager, so you have to approve any transactions that external account made on behalf of the ADI. There's a lot you can do, and that really opens up the use cases for using Accumulate. We're not going to go through all of that here today, but you're able to do all of that using the CLI. So what I highly recommend is, one, going through our documentation, specifically go through the CLI reference page, which is the most comprehensive guide on the CLI you will find. So I'm putting that here in the chat. Any questions so far? All right, so I'm going to assume everyone has been able to follow along and there's no trouble yet. So let's move on. Now that we've created these key pages, we've added keys to them, let's run our accumulate ADI directory one more time. So this is the command again to just show all the accounts in the directory. And we're going to run that on Web3athon. Oh yeah, and we have to pass in the to and from. Let's do 0 to 5. So we still only have a key book. That's the only account we actually have in our ADI. And we want to store tokens in this ADI. So what we have to actually do to store tokens is create a token account. Until you create that token account, you're not able to actually receive tokens. So if you try just sending a transaction to that ADI, your tokens wouldn't actually go anywhere. So let's go ahead and create a token account. So we do that with accumulate account create. And let's just bring up that menu really quick. You can see here we have 2 account types. We have a data account type and we have a token account type. So we're going to create a token account. So it's accumulate account create token. One thing I just want to highlight here, as you can see here, one of the flags is Scratch. So if you remember from the last workshop, there is a concept of Scratch accounts in Accumulate, which essentially means that after a 2-week period, all the transaction history, all the data for that account is pruned, leaving only the cryptographic output that data had once existed. We actually have deprecated the use of Scratch for token accounts because the use cases are really limited there. But this is really helpful for data accounts if you want to submit a lot of data to your ADI, but you don't want that data to live forever. Let's say, for example, you have a log data account where you're just logging simple operations. But after a 2-week period, you can get rid of that log. You can specify -- Scratch, and that would make your account a Scratch account. Since we're doing a token account, we're not going to do that. But I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that option. So for the token account, we do account create token. Actor ADI is the ADI you want to create the token account for. So this again is Web3athon. And then the signing key name, we can use any of the keys that we put into any of our key pages, except for key page 3, because we didn't actually add credits to key page 3. I'm not going to make that mistake a third time. Let's do one of the keys from key page 2, which we added credits to over here. So the signing key will be Web3athon key 2. Key index we'll skip because that's optional. We'll skip the key height. Next is the new token account URL. So when you're typing in your URL, you have to start with the top level account name. So that's Web3athon. And we'll call this, we'll just call this my hackathon winnings. Remember, folks, that the winners of this hackathon, first prize is $25,000 in Acme. Second prize is, I believe, $15,000 in Acme. And third prize is $5,000 in Acme. I think I got that right. So we're going to call this token account my hackathon winnings. So let's pretend that when we win this hackathon, that's where our winnings will go to. So the last thing, you have to specify the token URL. So Accumulate does support the creation of custom tokens. We're not going to be able to go through that here today in this workshop, but there is a guide available on our docs to walk you through how to create your custom token. If you did create a custom token, you can specify the URL here. So you can say, like, let's say I created a Quentin coin. I could specify that this token account is for Quentin coins and it can only hold that type of coin. We haven't created a custom token, so we'll just use the native Acme. So we're specifying that my hackathon winnings is an Acme token account. We can specify the keybook. We only have one keybook, so we're not going to do that. And it will automatically use the credits for the second key page, since that's where this key lives. Let's go ahead and run this command. And there we go. We can double check the transaction using txget. So just a side note, for the most part, you can use the universal get for all account types. You just cannot pass in a transaction ID into the universal get. You have to specifically use txget, but for everything else, you could use the universal get. So since we're checking this transaction ID, we're going to use txget, pass in the transaction ID. And as you can see here, this was a create token account transaction. And to just double check that this exists, we're going to use the directory command again. So this is going to list all the accounts for our ADI. So let's pass in Web3athon. And then let's just say pass in the first 10 accounts. I believe we'll only have 2. And yep, here we go. So we have the 2 accounts, which is Web3athon/book. That's our key book. And then we have Web3athon/my hackathon winnings. So now, let's say we wanted to see how much we've won. We can look over here, run get on Web3athon/my hackathon winnings. Sometimes it returns an unknown. That just means the server is acting a little wonky. So here, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to bring up the Explorer and I'm going to check it there. So actually, let me stop sharing for 1 sec and let me switch over to the Explorer. Just switching screen shares here. So let's refresh that. It looks like we're having a little error with the server again. All right, so not sure why that endpoint is down. Let's go back to the CLI. Worst comes to worst, you can connect to a specific server if you are having issues with the public endpoint, like I'm having right now. So I have a few servers here written down. So when I pass in an IP address like this and a port, I'm going to be connecting to a particular node. And so when I do that, now I'm getting the information I'm expecting to see. So you should be able to rely on the endpoint for the most part. There are some issues today, unfortunately. If you need a public endpoint because you're getting a lot of issues, or sorry, if you need a private node address because you're having a lot of issues with the public endpoint, message us on Discord and we'll give you an IP address or URL that you can use. I'll actually share this one in the chat for anyone who's following along and is experiencing the same problem. Just remember that if you're connecting to a particular server, you have to specify it with -s for every command. So I ran this with -s. Let's see if it works without the -s. Oh, it looks like we're back up and running on the public endpoint now. So back to the story here, we have a total winnings of 0 Acme, which I don't like. I think I want to be the first prize winner. So I'm going to send myself 25, well, let's send ourselves 1 million Acme just for fun. So this will be probably the last command we'll do today. So just to recap, we've created a Lite account. We've funded that Lite account with credits. We funded it with Acme and we funded it with credits. We created an ADI Web3athon. We created a key book. In that key book, we created a key page. We created 3 key pages. We added several keys in each of those 3 pages. We added credits to 2 of those key pages. And then we created a token account called My Hackathon Winnings. And since this token account has only 0 Acme, we're going to send ourselves some tokens. So we can feel good about having some winnings in our My Hackathon Winnings wallet. So to do that, we're going to run the command txcreate. So this is how you send tokens from one account to the other. Now the only key you need is the key of the account that holds the tokens. So I can send tokens to any account, of course, just like with any other blockchain network. So the origin URL, the account that we have that has tokens, is the Lite account that we used before, which I copied off to the side here. So we ran the Faucet twice on this Lite account, if you remember. Just side note, the Faucet only works with Lite accounts, so you can't run a Faucet on a token account. You'll have to run the Faucet on your Lite account and then send those tokens to your ADI token account the way I'm doing here. So we're passing in our Lite account that has the tokens. The signing key for this Lite account, we'll just pass in, this is the key name right here. But actually with a Lite account, you don't even need to specify this. That's one thing that's missing from this message here. The signing key name only refers to ADIs. So in this case, we can skip that. We can skip key index, we can skip key height. 2 is the address you want to send these to, which we know is right here, Web3athon / My Hackathon Winnings. And the amount. So let's send ourselves 1 million Acme. Actually, let's make it a more fun number. Let's send ourselves 1,002,052 Acme. And that looks good. So we can run this. There we go. So to check that this transaction went through, we can run txget with the transaction hash. And here we have a list of details, including the synthetic transaction. If we run txget on that synthetic transaction, we'll get a little bit more information. So now I'm using the synthetic transaction ID right here. Here we go. This gives you some more interesting information, such as what BVN was this account residing on. was this transaction sent to, who the signer was. And now let's go ahead and check the balance. We're going to use an account get on Web3athon / my hackathon winnings. And here we go. We have 1,002,052 Acme. So now we have some Acme in our My Hackathon winnings account. I'll just leave you with a ADI directory one more time. We'll do a directory on Web3athon. We'll do 0 to 5. And here we go. We have our keybook and our token account that we created and funded with 1,002,052 Acme. So I think that's all we have time for today. There's obviously a ton more that you can do. Too much to really go through. We'd need 4 or 5 workshops to really go through every command. Highly recommend going through our documentation. Highly recommend going through the CLI reference doc, which I pasted in the chat. There's a huge amount of use cases, so really explore. As you can tell, there's a lot new here in Accumulate that you're not going to find in other blockchains, such as the ability to store a multitude of private keys, the ability to permission other accounts to execute on your behalf. So please go experiment with the CLI, try new things, try setting up a manager for your ADI, try delegating access to an external account, try creating 50 keybooks, try creating 10,000 key pages with 10 million keys in it. There's so much you can do, and we really hope to see a lot of cool use cases coming from you guys in this hackathon. So that ends it here for this workshop. We have another 5 minutes, so if anyone has any questions or comments, if you want to talk about your idea, the floor is yours. And of course, you can also reach us through Discord on the Accumulate channel at any time. We're checking it every day, so if you do have questions that you think of after this, if you have any problems or issues that you're running into, you can ask for help there. We also have a Accumulate specific Discord, which after the hackathon, you can use to talk to anyone else who's working on the Accumulate protocol, who's building on the Accumulate protocol, or some of the engineers that are working on the protocol itself. They're always on our Accumulate Discord, which Kyle, thanks for putting that link in the chat. So you have that as well. During the duration of the hackathon, please use the Web3athon Discord, but you have this for afterwards. So how many projects have been submitted to the Web3athon for Acme? So I don't have the latest numbers today. I believe it's around 10 or 12. But I'm not sure if we have that information public. But we have a few projects that have been submitted, but those are just the ideas. So keep in mind that we're still in the ideathon phase, which means come up with your best idea. No one has begun building yet, to my knowledge.
100% right. No one has began building. Definitely see a ton of ideas coming over the next couple of weeks. And another thing that the Hacker Earth Cradle team and with all of our sponsors, and I know Quentin has worked with me on this too, really is helping some of these teams identify which technology would be best to build on for their project. So if you do have any questions, concerns about any of that, or really just need maybe a hand or a direction, then more than happy to support you all. Reach out in the Discord server. Anything Accumulate based, of course, reach out to Accumulate's channel or even into their own server as well. And I think you guys have added that to the Discord server, but if not, you'll be able to join their Discord server. They can send a link into the Accumulate channel. But other than that, I really appreciate it, guys. That was awesome. Quentin?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. And just last note I want to say, just to piggyback on that, we are absolutely available if anyone wants to even schedule a brainstorm session with any of us here on the Accumulate team. Happy to get on Zoom with you, talk through your idea, help you really polish it up and use the protocol to the best of the protocol's ability. So feel free to reach out to us at any time and we can schedule something.